Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, the Honorable Major General retired Edmund Dillon, MP, member for Point Fortin, has requested leave of absence from sittings of the House during the period May 23rd to 26, 2018. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 1, the notification of Her Excellency the President in respect of the nomination of Ms. Susan Elizabeth Craig James for appointment as a member of the Police Service Commission. Paper number 11, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Health to the 10th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Eastern Regional Health Authority for the financial years 2008 to 2013. Papers numbers 12 and 13, the responses to the second report of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration on an inquiry into the effectiveness of the state's interventions directed at socially displaced persons in Trinidad and Tobago. These responses, Madam Speaker, are from the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Papers numbers 14 and 15, the responses to the 7th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on an inquiry into the status of the implementation of the recommendations of the 2015 report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Diversity, the Environment and Sustainable Development on the examination of programs and services which provide support to victims of domestic violence. Madam Speaker, these responses are from the Ministries of Social Development and Family Services and National Security. Paper number 16, the ministerial response of the Ministry of National Security to the 6th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on an inquiry into the impact on mental health and family life of remandees at the remand prisons. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay the following papers. The consolidated audited financial statements of First Citizens Holdings Limited and its subsidiaries for the financial year ended September 30th, 2017. The audited financial statements of National Schools Dietary Services Limited for the financial year ended September 30th, 2017. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Mayor's Fund of the Chaguanas Borough Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2014. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Mayaro Rio Claro Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2006. The annual report and consolidated financial statements of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended September 30th, 2017. The second report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Sugar Industry Labor Welfare Committee for the year ended September 30th, 2003. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended September 30th, 2012. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Children's Life Fund for the year ended September 30th, 2013. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the National Institute of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology for the year ended December 31st, 2011. I beg to move that papers 2 to 3 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and papers 4 to 10 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that papers 2 to 3 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and papers 4 to 10 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Member for Tunapuna.
Reports from committees.
Member for Tunapuna.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present paper number 1, the 5th report of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration on the inquiry into the adverse health effects of fireworks. Thank you.
Member for Caroli Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to present the following reports. The 15th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of Water and Sewage Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the years 2008 to 2013, and the 16th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission for the years 2012 to 2015.
Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions.
Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, to the Minister of Finance. In light of a recent announcement that the government intends to build a United States dollars $104 million new industrial park at Point Lisas, could the Minister state when the negotiations for this loan facility took place?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this initiative, this project, was announced by the Office of the Prime Minister, arising from a press release coming out of the Prime Minister's official state visit to the Republic of China. And the issue of negotiations taking place for a loan do not arise, because this project is a direct result of the Prime Minister's official visit to China, and the matter will take place in the future.
Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Is the Minister saying that there has been no negotiations for a loan? This is a policy, at this stage, a policy matter in which you will enter into a concessional loan arrangement with the Chinese government for a facility to accommodate Chinese firms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Arising out of the visit of the Honorable Prime Minister to China, as is published on the website of the Office of the Prime Minister, this project arose from those discussions, and the matters to which you refer are to be negotiated.
Supplemental. Member for Oropouche.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In light of the to-be-negotiated loan, and in light of the fact that the same release from the OPM stated that the park is to be used by Chinese firms, could the Minister indicate whether or not the government intends to ask the Chinese government to contribute in part a grant towards the establishment of an industrial park which will be used by Chinese firms.
Madam Speaker, I do not want to preempt anything that the Honorable Prime Minister will say on his return. I will say no more on this matter, therefore.
Member for Princestown.
Madam Speaker, question number 2 to the Minister of National Security. Could the Minister inform this House what new specific measures have been identified emerging out of a meeting with divisional heads held this week to tackle the burning issue of murders and serious crime?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it will be recalled on May the 22nd, 2018. The Honorable Edmund Dillon met with police divisional heads, as he always and regularly does, to treat with the issue of the crime situation. The meeting was called to receive an update on the strategies currently being pursued at the various divisions in the fight against crime. The meeting also served to clarify the support and resources needed by the TTPS from the Ministry of National Security. The meeting also focused on the proposed strategies for the upgrade of existing technological systems to assist in intelligence gathering and crime detection. Also discussed were methods to increase synergies and information sharing among networks consistent with the government's interagency approach to crime prevention. Divisional heads reported on their recent strides and progress made in respect of their divisions. Improvement in detection rates, firearm seizures, surveillance and monitoring mechanisms, as well as evidence gathering, police mobile and foot patrols, as well as the joint police-army patrols in areas across Trinidad and Tobago, community engagement initiatives aimed at reducing violent crimes, gang activity, and youth offending, ongoing crime prevention projects in partnership with the non-governmental organizations, international agencies, and the general public. Since Tuesday's meeting, Madam Speaker, there have been major police operations in the Western Division in particular and across generally the country, resulting in seizures of firearms and ammunition and arrests of persons for various offenses. Similar activities will be conducted elsewhere throughout the country as required and proposed by the divisional head. Madam Speaker, as the police effects its mandate to prevent crime and other infractions of the law. I thank you.
Supplemental member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, seeing that several meetings like these have been held before with little results as relates to reduced murder and homicide, could the Minister state whether he is satisfied that the recommendations and strategies this time around would yield results as it relates to reduce murder and homicide rates specifically?
Minister of National Security.
The Minister is confident that the professionals of the police service, whose responsibility it is based on the discussions, is confident that they are on the way and doing what they are supposed to be doing in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Supplemental member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, to the Honourable Minister, without divulging sensitive details, could the Minister indicate whether part of the discussion surrounding technical support and cooperation from the government of Mexico, as touted by the Honourable Prime Minister a few months ago, and it also relates to a position taken by several criminologists that the Mexican cartel is involved in serious crime, murders, and homicides in Trinidad and Tobago?
That is a supplemental question. Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Acting Minister of National Security. Given the measures that he outlined just now, could the Minister state there are over 215 murders to date? Could the Minister state how many murders have been solved to date and how many people have been charged?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. In light of the travels of the substantive Prime Minister, could the acting, not Marco Polo, could the acting minister indicate whether or not the meeting discussed assistance from the New South Wales Police of Australia, where I think the Prime Minister touched on?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport, could the Minister inform this House if the lands needed to facilitate the construction of the current interchange have been acquired by the government based on the commencement of ancillary works and the erection of road traffic signage.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, no land has yet been acquired by the government. However, negotiations are ongoing with the relevant parties and the state agencies responsible for land acquisition.
Supplemental member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister advise this House under what terms and conditions that China Railway Construction Limited have moved on to the compound of the Kenora Drive-In?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Negotiations are ongoing with the relevant parties of the Kenora Drive-In, and permission have been granted for access for ancillary work. Thank you.
Supplemental member for Orpuchis.
Thank you very much. Minister, could you indicate the rents or fees being paid by the Ministry of Works and Transport or any other government agency to the owners of the Kedona driving lands for storing materials, etc. at this time?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Orpuchis, supplemental.
Minister, could you indicate categorically whether or not you are an owner or part owner of the lands as the heart of this question to be used for the interchange?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Orpuchis, supplemental.
Thank you very much. Minister, could you indicate any time frame for the completion of negotiations for the acquisition and negotiations, because this is not compulsory acquisition? Could you indicate a time frame for the completion?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's no rental being paid at this point in time for any storing of material at the compound of the Kedona. I do have an interest in the land at Kedona, and both parties are hoping that at the shortest possible time, the relevant agencies responsible for completing the negotiations and will take it. And I just want to put on the record that the Ministry of Works and Transport has no role in the acquisition of lands, and I would have recused myself from any such arrangements.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Acting Minister of National Security, could the Minister tell us why, after 2 years in government and promises made concerning improvements to the Forensic Science Center, the family of Anita Mohammed had to wait 5 months for positive DNA identification of her remains?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, we passed DNA legislation in this country. It is only very recently we have completed the regulations, passed it through this House. It is now in the Senate. Madam Speaker, we are constantly making every effort to improve the legislative framework as to the circumstances and the details of the Anita Mohammed case raised. The facts have not yet come to hand, and as such, I will provide an answer at the earliest opportunity.
Supplemental member for Naparima.
Could the Acting Minister tell us if fixed time frames, example 24 hours, are given to the Forensic Science Center for the completion of the performance of autopsies and other tasks? And when will the Forensic Science be in a position to give these time frames to give comfort to our struggle against crime?
Minister of National Security.
I am unable to respond to the specifics as requested by my friend from Naparima, but again, this could be easily accessed, and I'll make it available to him at the earliest opportunity.
Member for Naparima, supplemental.
Could the Acting Minister of National Security give us an idea of the backlog of work at the Forensic Science Center?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Caroni East.
Honorable Acting Minister, would you indicate whether the Forensic Science Center has been accredited fully so as to permit the results of the lab to be accepted in court?
Minister of National Security.
From the establishment of the Forensic Science Center, The question of accreditation is a work in progress. And Madam Speaker, as it was for the time when my friend was a part of the cabinet, it has not yet been deemed accredited, but that does not mean that its work does not stand to court scrutiny and for other public purposes.
Member for Old Pooch East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport. In light of reports indicating that the MV Galleon's passage has been docked in Panama for the last 5 days to undergo required modifications, could the Minister state the nature of these modifications and indicate when the vessel will arrive in Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is not true to say that for the past 5 days the Galleon passage have been docked in Panama. I've just been informed that the Galleon passage will arrive in Cuba tonight or early tomorrow. Cuba. In terms of the modifications in Panama, it was minor modifications to allow the Panamanian pilots to board the vessel, and the cost of that was minimal. I thank you.
Supplementary member for Old Pooch East.
Mr. Minister, are you concerned that at every port this vessel has touched, it requires repairs and modifications, minor or major?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam Speaker, I am pleased to announce that this vessel has successfully traveled half the world. And one of the big song and dance was a water pump that had to be changed. Now, a water pump is an item that has to be changed. And if you go on the internet, if you buy 2 or 3, you get them cheaper, because this is expected to be changed after you travel a certain distance. So I am not satisfied that every port they had major or minor work to be done. What I can say is that the vessel has performed well on its way under warranty to Trinidad and Tobago.
Supplemental member for Caroni East.
Minister, would you be in a position to indicate the total cost of this vehicle at the end of all these additions and repairs, modifications, and paying for pilots and so on? What would be the total cost to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for that?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam Speaker, all indications is that the price we paid for this vessel has been significantly less than the actual value of the vessel. And whatever cost is incurred, this country will still have a significant savings on this vessel. Thank you.
Honourable members, the time allotted for urgent questions is now spent.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 17 questions for oral answer. We will be answering 12. We are asking for deferral of questions numbers 226, 227, 239, 240, 241. With regard to the questions for written answer, there are 7 questions. We will be answering 4. We're asking for deferral of questions 222, 223, and 228. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 197 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Kindly, Madam Speaker, for the correct pronouncement of my portfolio. The matter is being currently addressed by the Personnel Department. On determination, the appropriate guidelines will be provided to the company's management. In the interim, however, Lake Asphalt has been meeting with the EPA in monthly meetings, which addresses non-crisis issues and day-to-day operations of the company.
Supplemental, member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister inform this House if there's any plan to privatize the security operations of Lake Asphalt?
Allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Vancouver South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 199 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First, a correction. The University of Trinidad and Tobago has a president who is the chief executive officer and a board of governors headed by a chairman. The university has been able to survive beyond 2018, in part because of the collection of some outstanding gate receipts of previous periods, cost reductions in payroll and in operating expenses, and the close management of its trade payables. The academic offerings in a university have to be equally shared by all members of the academic staff, recognizing differences in specialties of both subject matter and staff. Universities are academic institutions involved in teaching as well as in research, so that the computation of individual workloads has to take into account both teaching and the research output. An analysis of the workload of academic staff at the University of Trinidad and Tobago found that it is overstaffed by about 25%. Academic staff, therefore, have to be trimmed so that an equal distribution of the cumulative workload could be attained and maintained, so that the same level and quality of course delivery could be done. The ratio of non-academic staff to academic staff at UTT is about 2-to-1 currently. This is high by international standards, where the best run universities, those are most efficiently run, have a ratio that is closer to the reverse. In order to rationalize the ratio and provide the same level and quality of support, non-academic staff will also have to be trimmed as part of the restructuring exercise at the university. Therefore, the university has to undertake a severance program encompassing both the academic and non-academic staff of the institution. On the academic side, implementation should begin soon. In fact, I can say implementation has already begun. On the non-academic side, discussions are continuing with the recognized majority union. The other major measure to ensure sustainability of the university is campus and the program rationalization, of which preliminary action has already been taken. This exercise is expected to be deepened prior to the start of the new academic year 2018-2019. Thank you.
Supplemental member for Vancouver South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister inform this House whether the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago took a decision to transfer $324 million of UTT's unspent balances into the ETEC signature project at Tamina Intech Park?
That is a supplemental question. Member for Vancouver South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister inform this House when did the Registration, Recognition and Certification Board of Trinidad and Tobago determine that the academic members of staff of UTT are not workers recognized under the Industrial Relations Act of Trinidad and Tobago?
Education. Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, at this juncture, I don't have that information, but certainly I can get that information as soon as the member for Cuba South would write to me seeking that information. Thank you.
Supplemental member for Cuba South.
So, Madam Speaker, is the Minister advising this House that he is not aware of the pronouncement made by the Minister of Labour and Enterprise Development as it relates to the status of the academic staff at the University of Trinidad and Tobago as not being workers under the Industrial Relations Act?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, as usual, the questions that have been asked by Cuba South are convoluted. And therefore it needs that question. Madam, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And therefore it needs clarification. I just don't understand what the member for Cuba South is asking. And as a result, I'm asking him to be a little more precise, put it in writing, and I'll be happy to respond to it. Thank you.
Shogunas East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, with respect to the 25% overstaffing, can you tell us the names of those persons and when were they employed by the University of Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, surely the member for Caroni East doesn't expect me to provide him with the list of names of 28 or 25 persons now, or 25% of the workforce. I can't do that now. Certainly, that is most difficult for me to answer at this point. And therefore, the member is being unrealistic. Thank you very much.
Caroni East. Caroni East.
Could the minister indicate who or where the decision was made to bring a new ICT system in UTT at a cost of $45 million without request for proposal?
So that as a supplemental question. Member for Barata Salmon, supplemental.
Minister of Education, could you kindly state the specific criteria that is used to retrench the academic and non-academic staff of UTT?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, as was stated previously, there was a staff audit that was done, and on the basis of that audit, it was decided that there are a number of persons who were superfluous. And as a result of that, the decision has been taken that certain persons would have been retrenched. Thank you.
Member for Shogunas East, new question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 215 to the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ministry of Trade and Industry, through the Evolving Technologies and Enterprise Development Company Limited, ETEC, which has the mandate to develop and facilitate economic zones for the government of Trinidad and Tobago, has no immediate plans to develop an industrial park within the Shogunas East constituency. It would serve you well to note that industrial parks are not developed on the basis of political constituencies, but rather on the needs of the business community. ETEC, in the environs of Shogunas, has established the Bilger Road Industrial Park, and within the immediate vicinity, the Chase Village and Frederick Settlement Industrial Parks. All parks are within an approximate 25-kilometer or 16-mile radius of each other. ETEC also has plans to establish the Endeavour Business Park in Shogunas, once approval is received from the Commissioner of State Lands. There are also undeveloped lands available in Shogunas in the environs of Factory Road. Consideration is being given by the Board of ETEC to develop said lands into an industrial park. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Caroni East.
Could the minister indicate that ETEC, having spent close to $2 billion in Tamana Park, has there been any resultant benefit to the country without any business being there and having spent $2 billion at ETEC Tamana Park?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question, Member for Pooch East.
Thank you very much. Given the importance of the role of the Commissioner of State Lands in this matter, as the Minister indicated, could the Minister indicate whether or not Ms. Paula Drakes and others at that office have returned to their jobs?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Caroni East.
Would the Minister indicate whether the $425 million from UTT transfer to ETEC, is that going to be used for the construction of these industrial parks that you're speaking about?
Minister of Trade and Industry.
Speaker, but that consideration does not apply here at all.
Member for Faizabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 224 to the Acting Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a police officer who fails to respond to a domestic violence report commits a disciplinary offense described as neglect of duty. The Police Service Regulations number 156 provide the procedure on an alleged commission of such offense. The Commissioner shall designate an officer of the 1st Division who is not the head of the division connected with this matter as the disciplinary officer in each division, branch, or section, and the disciplinary officer shall be responsible for receiving all complaints against an officer by any person, including any member of the public or an officer, and he shall maintain a record of such complaints. Where a member of the public or an officer makes a complaint against a police officer to another officer junior in rank to the officer concerned, or such junior officer finds the officer concerned committing a disciplinary offense, such junior officer shall inform the disciplinary officer of the complaint as soon as possible in writing. The disciplinary officer shall, within 7 days from the date he is informed of the complaint, appoint an investigating officer who shall give the officer concerned a written notice stating the specific nature of the complaint, that the matter shall be investigated, and the officer concerned may, within 7 days of receipt of the written notice, give him an explanation in writing concerning the complaint. The investigating officer shall hold an office higher than that of the officer concerned. The investigating officer shall promptly, but not later than 30 days after his appointment, investigate the matter, produce a report of his investigation, and forward the report to the disciplinary officer. The investigating officer may apply to the disciplinary officer for an extension of time, but shall not be granted an extension exceeding 30 days to forward his report to the disciplinary officer. Where the officer concerned makes an admission of guilt, the investigating officer shall forward the matter to the disciplinary officer, who shall forward it to a disciplinary tribunal, which shall determine the penalty to be imposed without further inquiry. Where the disciplinary officer, based on the results of the investigation, finds that the complaint is without substance, he shall so inform the officer concerned, and the record of the complaint and of the investigation shall be immediately forwarded to the Commissioner for his final determination. Where the disciplinary officer finds that there is substance in the complaint, he shall cause the officer concerned to be charged for any disciplinary offense disclosed and refer the matter to the disciplinary tribunal not later than 28 days after the date of the charge. The disciplinary officer shall cause a copy of the charge to be served on the officer concerned, and shall contain the particulars of the time, date, and place of the hearing. Where an officer finds an officer of lower rank than him committing a disciplinary offense, or receives a report from another officer or member of the public the senior officer shall warn the officer in writing that he may be charged for a disciplinary offense and shall refer the matter to the disciplinary officer immediately. Additionally, Police Service Regulations number 173 provides penalties that can be imposed for a disciplinary offense, such as dismissal, that is termination of appointment, reduction in an office, that is removal to another grade with an immediate reduction in pay, reduction of remuneration, that is an immediate adjustment of remuneration to a lower point on the scale of remuneration attached to the particular office, deferment of increment, that is a postponement of the date on which the next increment is due with corresponding postponements in subsequent years, stoppage of increment, that is no payment for a specific period of an increment otherwise due, fine or reprimand. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Supplemental member for Faizabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, in the particular case of Anita Bahadur, can you indicate, this is regarding the Salmon Police Station, can you indicate whether there was any breach of the protocol or procedure with respect to complaints that were made to those police officers?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Very sadly, I do not have the particular details in that matter.
Member for Naprimo.
Madam Speaker, question number 225 to the Acting Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable members, with respect to the issue of violent neighbors, it is to be noted that when a report involving violence is made to a police station or a mobile unit closest to the location of the violence, they are contacted and is directed to investigate the matter. In incidences where no mobile unit is in close proximity, one will be dispatched from the station to address the matter in an urgent manner. The Domestic Violence Act, Chapter 4556, defines domestic violence to include physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological or financial abuse committed by a person against a spouse, child, or any other person who is a member of the household or dependent. While the Act's definition of spouse includes former spouse, a cohabitant or former cohabitant are also included. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has clear procedures that guides its approach to addressing any type of domestic violence situation. Additionally, the Domestic Violence Procedural Manual, as well as Standing Order number 53, Domestic Violence Procedures, provides a step-by-step guideline on the approach. Extracted hereunder are pertinent parts of the said Standing Order 53. Section 6, for an example, says, the police officer to whom a report of domestic violence is made shall A, record the report in the station diary or in his pocket diary if he is not at station. B, inform the senior second division officer at the station about the report. Section 10 says, second division officers attached to the E999 command center on receipt of an emergency domestic violence call shall A, dispatch a vehicle to the location of the report. B, remain online with the victim or informant until response unit arrives at the location. C, provides assistance and comfort to the victim and or informant. D, solicit all information necessary to assist the victim or informant. The Domestic Violence Investigative and Procedural Manual was developed for police officers to guide such officers in the approach to be taken in dealing with domestic violence and enforcement of protection orders as issued by the court. Additionally, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service continues to train its officers in the implementation of these procedures as outlined in the manual. The police organization will continue to train officers and monitor the enforcement of the said procedures in handling domestic violence cases, including dealing with protection orders. Should it be required, honorable members, a copy of Standing Order 53 can easily be provided for your elucidation and better information. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Supplemental member for Naparima.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Do the protocols enumerated by the Acting Minister of National Security contain specific time frames for responding to a complaint, for example, of spousal abuse? And if not, is it the intention of the ministry to develop these specific time frames as they do in Canada, the United States, and Singapore?
Minister of National Security.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have just outlined the rules and the procedures as they now are. All of it implies good sense and reasonableness and urgency in the execution of their duties. If it becomes necessary, I have no doubts that, as they do in other countries, specific time frames can easily be included. It is a matter that I am prepared to raise with the Commissioner of Police, who manages and monitors these arrangements. I thank you.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 231 to the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Rural Development and Local Government.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, the CPEP company continues to act responsibly and through its attorneys has applied for all judgments that have been entered in default to be set aside. Excuse me. Since these matters are in court, it is unlikely for marshals of the court to levy against the company at this time. With regard to the money claimed by contractors for the health sector initiative, CPEP has engaged legal counsel as well as the quantity surveying firm of IT McLeod Projects Limited to verify the claims prior to payment. Once claims are verified, the company will work with the contractor to determine a payment schedule, thereby preventing further action. It should be noted that IT McLeod Projects Limited has not yet completed the exercise of surveying all the health facilities relating to the health sector initiative. In addition, CPEP has been working with other state agencies and has explored leasing options to furnish its offices and replace seized assets to ensure that it continues to deliver on its mandate. Leased assets and assets that are not owned by CPEP cannot be seized from its premises. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Oropouche West.
Minister, can you confirm whether approximately 1.9 million of equipment were levied after failing to make payments to Bora Construction?
Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Madam Speaker, CPEP has paid off 2 contractors in full, that is Shade Construction Company Limited and Sambuco Construction, those are in the sum of $939,609 to Shade Construction Company Limited and $608,941 to Sambuco Construction. Payments in the amount of $500,000 have been made to Tora Bora Construction and Contractors Limited, that is the company that levied, as part settlement of their $1.9 million judgment.
Supplemental member for Oropouche West.
Honorable Minister, on what basis did Bora Construction levy when under Part 47(6) of the CPR rules, it specifically says no writ of execution may be issued where the judgment debtor is the state?
Minister of Rural Development.
Madam Speaker, the debt is not owed to the state. The debt was a CPEP, which is a company, not the state.
Supplemental member for Oropouche West.
Is it that CPEP doesn't fall under local government, rural and local government?
There's a difference between a state enterprise and the state. Madam Speaker, if I may be allowed, there is a difference between a state enterprise and the state. CPEP is a company, not the state. I hear Cyprian, who is a senior counsel, who should know better, giving income.
Order. Member for Oropouche West, question number 232.
Question number 232 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has instituted a number of measures in collaboration with other arms of national security and other relevant governmental agencies aimed at strengthening its border management and control capacity so as to safeguard the country against the entry of illegal persons or unauthorized persons and items. The key agencies under the purview of the Ministry of National Security with the responsibility for border management are the Immigration Division and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, in particular, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. The Immigration Division continues to promote national security by effectively monitoring and controlling the movement of persons into, within, and out of the country. To this end, the division pursues a border policy that focuses on the entry into and exit from Trinidad and Tobago of travelers who meet entry requirements, as well as identification and management of the risk to Trinidad and Tobago arising from those travelers who do not meet entry requirements. The Integrated Border Management System is a database that records travelers entering and exiting the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at a designated port of entry. The system is based on 2 border control sites at the Piarco International Airport and the ANR International Airport, as well as 10 seaports identified hereunder. Let me list them, Madam Speaker. Cruise Ship Complex, Dock Road, Port of Spain. Cruise Inn Complex, Chagaramas. Administrative Building, Petrotrin, Pointe-a-Pierre. Plip Deco Compound at Point Lisas. Petrotrin Compound, Point Fortin. Cedrus Security Complex in Cedrus. Port Authority Complex, Scarborough, Tobago. Administrative Complex, Charlottesville, Tobago. National Fisheries Compound, Sealots, Port of Spain, and of course, Claxton Bay. Additionally, the Enforcement Unit of the Immigration Division continues to investigate and make necessary recommendations on breaches of the Immigration Act, Chapter 1801, which includes illegal entry. This unit partners with other law enforcement agencies, such as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, the Licensing Authority, and the Customs and Excise Division of the Ministry of Finance to investigate various infractions of the law or suspected illicit activities perpetrated by foreign nationals. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard also plays a very significant role in safeguarding our borders against illegal immigrants. Additionally, the utilization of the National Coastal Surveillance Center has provided the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard with the capacity to continuously monitor Trinidad and Tobago's territorial waters, as well as the ability to identify vessels of interest and action taken to intercept them. I thank you very much.
Supplemental Member for Oropouche West.
Minister, can you indicate whether those 6 detainees have since been deported?
Minister of National Security.
I am unable to give any specific and sensible reply to that, but it can be provided at the earliest.
Member for Oropouche, Member for Caroni East. Supplemental question.
Honorable Minister, would you be in a position to give an average number of illegal immigrants who have come through the various 10 points of entry that you speak about within the last year or so?
That is a supplemental question.
We'll ask it.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you. Question number 233 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, some have a obsession with Kidona, you know. Madam Speaker, in relation to the report of 35 PTSC buses, I wish to convey the following information. The 35 buses which were purchased for the use of the Public Transport Service Corporation were cleared with all waivers of motor vehicle tax and VAT. The PTSC incurred no storage fees in the clearing of the 35 buses, and all 35 buses have already been placed into service. I thank you.
Member for Oropouche East.
Very much. Madam Speaker, question number 237 to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Response to question 237. The Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation is not considering a moratorium at this time. However, the corporation is willing to work with those homeowners and tenants who are in arrears as a result of unemployment or other circumstances in an effort to determine a payment plan to reduce their outstanding balances. It should be noted, however, that these persons must first visit the HDC to enter into discussions with the Recoveries Department to discuss their circumstances and to chart a way forward towards settling the arrears on their accounts.
Supplemental member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Could I ask the Acting Minister of Housing and Urban Development, is the Minister aware and does the Minister support the existing policy of the HDC to evict persons because of their failure at this time, given their economic circumstances, to complete mortgage arrangements with the TTMF in circumstances where their rental is up to date? The HDC is seeking to evict persons in that category. Is the Minister aware and support that policy?
I don't allow that as a supplemental question. Supplemental member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. Could I ask the Acting Minister of Housing and Urban Development if the Minister is concerned with the eviction letters sent to HDC occupiers of housing units threatening eviction for failure to negotiate a mortgage arrangement with the TTMF. Are you aware of that?
Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, I do not accept any hearsay coming from the member for Oropouche East.
Member for Oropouche East.
The next question or
yes,
supplemental?
238, because I didn't see anything else.
Oh, you didn't see anything. Right. Question number 238 to the Minister of Health. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Discussions are being held to operationalize the facility using a partnership between the University of the West Indies and InterHealth Canada. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. In light of discussions being held, can the Minister indicate a timetable to complete discussions and to have this critical facility operationalized?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I like the choice of words by my colleague, critical facility. The critical facility in this country, Madam Speaker, refers to the Central Block in Port of Spain, where a 2009 PAHO report said that that central block was a seismic risk and should be replaced. That is the critical facility that should have been built in this country, not an 80-bed children's hospital for $1.6 billion. If you want to talk about critical facilities, that was critical. That was critical. But it told the people of Diego Martin, Port of Spain, Laventil, Mova, we don't care about you. We don't care about Central Block, but we will try to build an 80-bed facility.
Continue, member.
And what was more critical was that the last administration opened the facility on the 14th of August 2015, 2 weeks before the election, when it was a construction site, and promptly closed it on the same day. So why are you asking me to operationalize it now when you closed it? And every time, Madam Speaker, a member of the media asks me when I'm going to open it, I always ask them, why don't you ask the member of Superior why she closed it? And up to today, I cannot see a published answer as to why you closed the facility on the same day that you opened it. So the critical facility was to have replaced Central Block in Port of Spain, which is what we are doing. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Oropuch East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, having not asked about the Central Block or the engine block, could I ask the Minister, in light of his comments earlier, can we now conclude that this Minister of Health does not have a clue as to when the Children's Hospital will be operationalized, given the rantings about the Central Block?
Member for St. Joseph.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The facility will be operationalized. May I also remind the member that when we came into office, there was no HR plan for that facility. There was no financing plan for that facility. The facility was a construction site and remained a construction site until July 2016. 2016. And I'm hearing a member for Princeton, I haven't opened it. But the question which you can't answer is, why did you close it? Why did you close the facility?
Member for Princeton. Member for Princeton, whether you choose to look this way or not, when I stand, I expect silence. Member for Couva South, while I'm on my legs, I'm having great difficulties hearing everyone for the entire session thus far, because I'm hearing your voice. Please try to maintain your volumes. Minister of Health.
The question is, Madam Speaker, why didn't they put a cath lab in San Fernando General Hospital, which is needed? Why didn't they repair the cath lab in Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex? Why didn't they repair the roof of the St. Anne's Hospital? Why didn't they repair the roof of the Port of Spain General Hospital? Why didn't they fix chemistry, food and drugs? Why didn't they fix the Trinidad Public Health Lab? But all their solutions for the healthcare was to build a children's hospital in Couva with 80 beds with no financing, when the Wendy Fitzwilliams Children's Hospital is 70% utilized. 70% utilized. We did not need an 80-bed children's hospital, but their only solution to healthcare was ignore chemistry, food and drugs, ignore Trinidad Public Health, ignore San Fernando Cath Lab, ignore this, ignore that, and deify one person by putting a children's hospital to tug at the heartstrings of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you again, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Caroni East.
Could the Minister indicate what is the nature of operations of Interhealth?
Honourable members, I would like to hear the question being asked by member for Caroni East.
Indicate what is the nature of operations of Interhealth, and have they associated with them an offshore medical school?
Minister of Health.
As I said, discussions are being held, and it will be premature for me to disclose that at this time. I don't want to jeopardize those sensitive discussions at this stage, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Oropuch East.
Could I ask the Minister, given all that he has said, would the Minister agree that it is an act of criminal negligence to leave a hospital closed for children?
Minister of Health.
The act of criminal negligence was to leave Central Block in Port of Spain, for which you had a PAHO 2009 report which spoke to the structural integrity. That was criminal negligence. And the criminal negligence was not me failing to operationalize it. The criminal negligence is your closure of the hospital on August 14th. And to want me to open up, and you open a construction site as a...
Honourable members, the time for oral questions or notice is now spent.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers.
Honorable members, the time for questions or notice is now spent. Make the announcement.
Statements by ministers.
Honorable members, by consent, this item of business has been deferred to later in the day's proceedings.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills on the supplemental order paper, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority bill, in the name of the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
What about the statements? No. Okay. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that in accordance with Standing Order 64-1C, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Bill 2018 be referred to a joint select committee hereby established for consideration and report.
Honorable members, the question is that in accordance with the Standing Order 64-1C, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Bill 2018 be referred to a joint select committee hereby established for consideration and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
The Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018 in the name of the Minister of Finance. The Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill 2018 in the name of the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that in accordance with Standing Order 64-1C, the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018 and the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill 2018 be referred to a joint select committee hereby established for consideration and report.
Honorable members, the question is that in accordance with Standing Order 64-1C, the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018 and the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill 2018 be referred to a joint select committee hereby established for consideration and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, private members' business. Motions.
Honorable members, the debate on the following motion, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Friday, March 23rd, 2018, will be resumed. Be it resolved that this House take notice of the failure of government to present a viable plan to diversify the economy and to take Trinidad and Tobago on the path of sustainable growth. Member for St. Anne's East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is an honor and a privilege to rise in this House to contribute to this debate, and I want to thank the members and the constituents of St. Anne's for affording me this opportunity to be here today. As we look at the resolution stating that this House take notice of the failure of the government to present a viable plan to diversify the economy and to place Trinidad and Tobago on the path of sustainable growth. Madam Speaker, this whole question of diversification of the economy and even the term diversified economy has become, unfortunately, in this country, somewhat of a cliche. We've been hearing it over and over discussed, and I want to even venture that sometimes people speak about diversification, not necessarily understanding exactly what it means in terms of the country, the economy, the ways it can take place, and why it is important. So I want to start off, Madam Speaker, by indicating that diversification can take place in two major forms, and sometimes we think only about one, where we get different ranges of revenue generation or find different sources of revenue. And, Madam Speaker, that is just but one way in which we can diversify the economy. The other way would be to increase the market for the exports of the country. And, Madam Speaker, I want to, and I will speak further about it lower down, where we speak about increasing the range of revenue sources, and this government has spoken about tourism. And where we speak about the other method of diversification, which speaks to increasing the market for exports, this government has been at the forefront of trade missions to different countries, Chile, China, and I will speak more about those later down in my contribution. Madam Speaker, it is important for our listeners and our country, as a matter of fact, every citizen, to understand the importance of diversification and the fact that it is critical to guard against economic instability. If we think about a homeowner or a homemaker, when we think about how we look at our revenue streams, there's a term that we use speaking about don't put all your eggs into one basket. And that is exactly the premise of a diversified economy, where you think about all the different things that can happen if you only have one source of revenue, and you try to guard against the problems that will arise if your one source of revenue dries up, either in the materials or in the market for that source of revenue. And therefore, a diversified economy provides that level of stability because you have different areas in which you can have your revenue stream coming in, and you don't have to worry so much if one of those revenue streams becomes in danger based on economic circumstances. Madam Speaker, I think it is important to, at this stage, take some time just to understand what a diversified economy looks like and what a non-diversified economy looks like, and therefore locate Trinidad and Tobago's position within those two contexts. So I know that the members opposite love to use Singapore, but I want to use an example that is a little bit closer to home with respect to Latin America. I want to look at an example of a diversified economy, and that economy is of Chile. Very quickly, Madam Speaker, the main exports of Chile, I want to expose what they are. Copper, 26.7%. Ores, ash and slag, 25.8%. Fish, 8%. Fruit and nuts, 7.3%. Wood, 3.4%. Beverages, 3.1%. And there are many more exports of this country, but I want to draw the attention of the listening public to the fact that these 8 products that I have just called make up 85% of the total exports of Chile, with the greatest percentage being given to copper at 26.7%. And I want to contrast that situation in Chile, where you have a diversified economy, with the situation in another country that's been in the news very recently, is very close to us, and therefore we should be able to relate very easily, and that country is Venezuela. In Venezuela, the main exports would be oil, organic chemicals, iron and steel, aluminium, copper, plastics. But the important thing to note is that oil contributes 91% of the exports of Venezuela. So on one hand, we have Chile, where you have 8 export products making up 85% of the product total exports. And then you have Venezuela, where just one product makes up 91% of the total exports. And that is the essential difference between a diversified economy and a non-diversified economy as we speak about the diversification of Trinidad and Tobago's economy. And I want to just go a little bit further to explain how that economic diversification leads to economic resilience, using these same two examples in the global recessionary period of 2013 to 16. Very quickly, Madam Speaker, during that period, the Chilean economy growth slowed by 3%. Still remained positive, but in that recessionary period, slowed by 3%. Whereas we could contrast the non-diversified Venezuelan economy, which contracted into negative growth by 20%. And so it shows very clearly how one country was able to resist and have resilience in that type of circumstance where one other with a non-diversified economy would have a totally different circumstance. And so where do we locate our country, Trinidad and Tobago? If we look at our main exports, Madam Speaker, natural gas and oil, inorganic chemicals, organic chemicals, iron and steel, fertilizers, beverages and spirits as the main bunch of exports, we can recognize that in our own country, over 80% of our exports fall within the natural gas, oil, and the petrochemical industry. So we are not as diversified as Chile, certainly, but we are not as non-diversified as Venezuela. We are somewhere there in the middle, and therefore, we are naturally, I think everyone knows this because we have been experiencing it for the past couple of years, we are liable to feel the effects of that global recessionary period. We have been feeling it, we have been dealing with it, because our diversification is not at the level where we would want it to be. And this is a conversation, Madam Speaker, that has been going on in this country for the past 3 decades, 30 years, which is why I find it difficult to understand why in 2 years of this government's tenure, 2.5 years, we are asked to answer a resolution which says that we have failed to present a viable plan, because it makes absolutely no sense, because everyone knows that this discussion about diversification has been going on for 3 decades, and certainly in the time of those who now sit in the opposition. So we acknowledge that as a country, we need to get moving on diversification. And I also want to submit, Madam Speaker, and I will elucidate how as I speak further. I want to submit that the PNM government, and especially this government led by Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, has done more for diversification than any other government in this country. As we go back to what diversification means, we go back to what it means. One of the thrusts of diversification would be to expand markets for Trinidad and Tobago exports. And in doing that, Madam Speaker, I want to look at some of the actions of our Honorable Prime Minister, who has been at the forefront of market expansion for trade opportunity. I want to remind the listening public that in July 2016, shortly after taking office, our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, engaged Suriname's president and the Chilean president, and we heard all about it when he returned from the 37th CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in Guyana. That was in July 2016. And one of his areas of focus was engaging them in trade discussions in order to expand our markets into the Latin American countries. And that discussion of July 2016 resulted in May 2017 in the Honorable Prime Minister leading a delegation, a trade delegation into Chile to discuss that whole issue of trade, to sign bilateral agreements and the partial scope agreements. That was also signed. And I want to emphasize the importance of Chile to Trinidad and Tobago. 92% of Chile's LNG comes from Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore, Chile is a critical trading partner. And this effort to expand our markets for our exports, which is a viable diversification thrust, was led by none other than our Prime Minister. And therefore, this issue of failure of the government to present a viable plan really makes no sense as a resolution, because we have presented by our honorable leader taking the front and leading to expand our markets so that our trade can be expanded. And Madam Speaker, I want to draw the attention of the listening public again to the fact that even now, our Honorable Prime Minister is abroad, and on his state visit to China, what he has been doing has been bringing in the results that will do just this, what we are speaking about, diversification by expanding our exports, where we have agreements being signed for our asphalt now to be used for the airport in China. We have investment in an industrial park. That agreement is also being finalized and discussed. And we have been the first Caribbean country to sign on to the One Belt, One Road initiative. And that gives us the opportunity, again, to increase our trading relationship with China, allowing our exporting to have a wider market, a viable diversification method, all led in just these three examples, and there are many more that the Ministry of Trade would have espoused in her contribution, all of these led by our Honorable Prime Minister, and ensuring that we have the opportunity to trade more and increase the market for our exports. And therefore, this resolution, we dismiss it out of hand. Again, examples, firm examples of our government doing what we have to do for diversification. You know, Madam Speaker, I heard one of our members on the other side talking about Marco Polo. And, you know, it made me smile because as a young member of this House, I sit and I look at all of the contributions of the more experienced members. And I'm, you know, looking at the general manner and demeanor of that particular member who would have made that comment. It reminded me, when I reflected on Marco Polo, of a children's game. That's a children's game. And I realized, and looking at the utterances and the whole manner of that member who made the comment, I realized how apt it was that his comment about these important things would reflect on a children's game. It seemed particularly apt, Madam Speaker. No, this is not also playing games. It's obvious that the member's mind is on games, but we are not on games. Our Prime Minister is not traveling to play games. Our Prime Minister is traveling to increase the trade relationships of Trinidad and Tobago, and that's what we have to emphasize. Madam Speaker, I want to look at the second method of diversification, which treats with increasing the range.
Honorable members, the level of talk in the chamber is becoming quite distracting and disturbing.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. In the efforts to increase the range of revenue sources, this government has from the start indicated very clearly its intention to focus on certain sectors for growth. So the agricultural sector, the tourism sector, those have been clearly identified from the start. And it's strange that those on the other side are saying there is no plan, because I've heard them on many occasions trying to pull down the standards initiative and thrust that was put forward very early as a plan for the tourism sector. So you can't be half pregnant. You can't say you don't know, there's no plan, and you are bashing the plan at the same time. So there's obviously a plan for the tourism sector, regardless of whether the opposition wants Tobago to benefit from that or not. This government is intending to go forward and to ensure that our country, both islands, benefit from our efforts at diversification and increasing the range of revenue sources available to Trinidad and Tobago. So as we discuss tourism as a growth area, what has been done, and of course the Minister of Tourism will go further in this discussion, but everyone knows in this country that the approach to tourism has been revamped. Everyone knows that there are now two companies which will deal with tourism, one focusing on Tobago, one focusing on Trinidad. And everyone knows that the Sandals Thrust in Tobago has been identified and work is continuing to make that a reality. The focus on Trinidad has come down to conference and cultural tourism, festival tourism. And Madam Speaker, I wanted to speak a bit about cultural tourism, because cultural tourism has been said to lead the growth in the travel industry in recent times. One study has spoken about US tourists, 80% of them being cultural tourists, people who travel to attend an arts event or a cultural event or a heritage event. And so cultural tourism is one of the growing subsets of the overall tourism industry. And it really reflects the fact that tourists are entering this postmodern type of era where they don't want the sleekly packaged tourist not package, I just said packaged. They don't want the sleekly packaged tourism experiences. They don't want that anymore. They want to be able to get into the authentic life and heritage of a country. And they want to see what the grassroots experience. And they want to get in with the usual people. They don't want, again, to go to a hotel and just sit there and, go to a resort. That's one type, but cultural tourism is growing. And we want to be able, Madam Speaker, to get in on that thrust. And so, the cultural tourism drive has identified 6 criteria that people are looking for. And these include handicraft and visual art, culinary art, social practices, rituals and festive events, music and performing arts, oral traditions and expressions, and knowledge and practices concerning nature. Those are the areas that tourists are looking for. That's the growing area now, where they want to come and experience those things in a country. Madam Speaker, I want to focus now on the role of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts in this whole cultural tourism thrust. Because, Madam Speaker, our mandate, and we take it very seriously, is developing the cultural tourism product. We see ourselves at the bottom of that chain, of one of the important cogs in developing that cultural tourism product. We see ourselves in partnership with the Ministry of Trade, who does the developing of the cultural industries, and the Ministry of Tourism, who promotes our cultural tourism product and who ensures that brand TNT takes center stage. So it's a 3-pronged approach where the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts with responsibility for culture, the Ministry with responsibility for development of the cultural industries, and the Ministry with the responsibility for brand TNT come together to make something and to really position Trinidad and Tobago along that line so that cultural tourism, we can be part of that growing thrust. Madam Speaker, how do we see ourselves developing this cultural tourism product? How is the work that we do important in doing this? And I want to look at 4 areas of our work. The first being development of artists, and artisans. Artists, and artisans. Like Rafi G, who was there with us? Yes. We've had lots of them. Sorry.
Can direct your conversation this way, please.
Madam Speaker, we are at the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts involved in a number of programs which develop our artists, those who are involved in the visual arts and sculpture and so on, our artists, those who are involved in the performing arts, and our artisans, those who make functional arts such as jewelry and woodwork and so. Madam Speaker, we have been offering the Music Schools program for the past 4 years or so, and that program involves 250 students in the July to August vacation time and expose them to music and musical instruments where they can now have an appreciation of music, and many of them go on and continue to involve themselves in music. Mentoring by the Masters, Madam Speaker, very important program where we focus on heritage development, development of the cultural industries, and where we bring together young practitioners, not necessarily young in age, but young in experience, young cultural practitioners, and those who have achieved excellence, Trinidadians and Tobagonians who have achieved excellence. And Madam Speaker, let me indicate that the focus and the emphasis is on making sure that the bunch of people who are mentoring have really been excellent in their fields and can impart to those young and upcoming cultural practitioners the type of best practice tips, the type of advice that they would need to also rise on that cultural platform and ensure that our level of practitioners is maintained. And so we have that program running for the past 5 years, where at least 75 practicing artisans are able to get the experience of the masters. Then we run the technical camps, Madam Speaker, where we look at different areas of the cultural industries. So, for example, music mastering, for example, stage makeup. These back-end and very important areas of production and different areas that we have our cultural practitioners involved in. And that program trains at least 150 people per year. All of these programs being offered free so that our artist development can take place. Our cultural camps, again, during the July-August vacation, where we partner with other people who are offering camps along the cultural range, where you can do mask making, you can do different types of cultural activities, and we support those camps where we have over 300 young people involved every year. In the area of handicraft, Madam Speaker, the ministry recently held, just last year, a handicraft symposium where we invited artisans from all around the country to come and discuss what their needs were, their training needs, their needs for exposure. Coming out of that, Madam Speaker, we have run 3 craft markets and various trainings targeted at artisans where they can develop their skills not just in making craft, but the entrepreneurial skills, how they present their material, how they price their material, ways in which they can involve technology and have a website that will help them. Madam Speaker, these are the types of activities we have been engaged in to develop our artists and artisans. I want to speak about our well-known community education classes that happen in community centers around the country, sometimes in schools, where over 10,000 persons per year are trained in the different skills that can allow them to become entrepreneurs. Small entrepreneurs, some of them go into business, some of them have a sideline business, and it offers to them an opportunity to develop themselves for free and to be able to make a living. And Madam Speaker, we have had those all around the country for years. I want to also mention our Best Village program, when we speak about development of artists and artisans, where so many community groups, Madam Speaker, over 12,000 participants per year, 90% of them under the age of 20, involved in our folk arts, our folk traditions, and folk meaning both the traditional East Indian, African, Chinese. There are also categories where there are Chinese dances and so on that are presented, if the village also is able to do that. And Madam Speaker, that has been going on for years in order to do that. And what we have done over the years, Madam Speaker, is ensure that the program maintains its relevance, ensure that it maintains the standards that are necessary so that we can develop our artists and artisans and our artists. And Madam Speaker, this is just a snapshot of some of the programs that are in place to develop as we look at developing the cultural tourism of Trinidad and Tobago, as we look at ensuring that the product comes together in a way that we want to present to the rest of the world. Madam Speaker, I want to speak on the support for and development of festivals. Because one of the important aspects of cultural tourism would be the presence of festivals on the cultural landscape, allowing persons to plan to be present at some of these festivals. The Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts provides grant funding to ensure that artistic productions, festivals, national and religious, both national and religious, traditional festivals are on our cultural landscape. There are many people who ask, why does the government support and has supported for years these types of events? And the reason why they are supported is because if we are to present to the region and to the international public a very diversified cultural landscape, the government has a vested interest in partnering with institutions to ensure that these things are presented and that they come off well and that they are there for people to exploit and to enjoy. And so let me go down the list with the number of festivals in this country, festivals, national festivals, religious festivals, and artistic festivals that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, supports. We support festivals for Diwali, for Eid, for Spiritual Baptist Day, for Parang, the Bokas Lit Festival, the Opera Festival, the Music Festival, Emancipation Festivals, festivals that happen around Christmas time in different villages, the First Peoples Festivals, the Film Festival of Trinidad and Tobago, Ramlila, Pagua, the Folk Festival of Best Village, the Drama Festival, theatrical productions, jazz festivals, community festivals, and these are just a snapshot of the festivals and national productions that we support. Because all of these tie in, Madam Speaker, to what our cultural tourism product looks like. And it looks rich, and it looks diverse. And we recently have done a cultural calendar along with an app, Madam Speaker, that is able to track all of the national festivals. And this is not at all including some of the very private things that happen year-round. But these are things that we can map on a calendar, and we have done so to offer to the international and regional community a calendar that they can plan if they want to come to Trinidad and Tobago to be involved in some of these festivals, because that is an important thing. When we want to partner with the Ministry of Tourism, there must be fixed things on our calendar that people can plan to come to Trinidad and Tobago for. And so that is important, and that is what we have done. So there's the grant funding on one hand, where we support and make sure the festivals happen. And then there's the mapping to ensure that people can know and plan to come to Trinidad and Tobago to be a part of this. And this bringing together of the ministries with one purpose is one of the important facets of our cultural policy that is now going out for discussion. And this cultural policy for Trinidad and Tobago has been on the cards for many years. Governments have come and gone without it being enacted. But, Madam Speaker, I want to indicate to you that we are focused on ensuring that this policy becomes a reality. Because this policy is where we can put the framework in place to develop our cultural tourism product and put institutions in place that will support it. And there's in that policy a formal institution that brings together these three ministries, these three very important ministries, with responsibility for culture, with responsibility for development of the cultural industries, and with responsibility for the promotion of brand Trinidad and Tobago. And this is what we want to do, and put this in formal institutions so that going forward, the system is in place. So it doesn't matter which personalities come out of the system and who is the politician in charge, but the system being in place so that we can develop as a country and make sure that our cultural tourism product is at its maximum. Madam Speaker, I want to touch briefly now on something that will set the stage and the platform for us to present ourselves in the region and really position ourselves as the cultural hub. And that is our hosting of CARIFESTA 2019 in 2019, August 16th to 25th. Madam Speaker, CARIFESTA is our premier arts and cultural festival. It is something that is looked forward to by the region, and as its mission, it is to present the Caribbean region as a cultural hub. And Madam Speaker, if this Caribbean region is a cultural hub, then we want to be the gemstone within the region, Trinidad and Tobago, as the premier cultural hub of this region. And Madam Speaker, the plans for CARIFESTA 2019, which is a huge undertaking, I am happy to report that the plans are well underway. This festival was held in Barbados in 2017. And coming out of Barbados and other countries which held CARIFESTA, there are a slew of recommendations which indicate how early the planning must start to ensure that everything falls into place. I'm happy to report, Madam Speaker, that we have been able, at this juncture, to employ our host country management committee. We have been able to employ critical members of our CARIFESTA secretariat, who, as we speak, are engaged in working out the details of the CARIFESTA plan. The draft plan has already been seen by Cabinet and passed, and now we are at the point where the detailed plan is coming to Cabinet within the next 2 months, so that by that time we can know exactly what that CARIFESTA will look like, what its shape would be, what it would cost, who will be involved, and so we will be able to present ourselves in 2019 as a well-organized, well-oiled cultural machine and position ourselves at the top of the regional chain for attracting tourists to this country. We want to be at the top of this wave of cultural tourism, Madam Speaker, and we are intending to work very closely with all our agencies who are on board so that we will be able to position ourselves very high on the level. Yes, we know that the others are well into the tourism brand, but Madam Speaker, there is nothing that stops Trinidad and Tobago under the astute leadership of our Prime Minister.
Original 30 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes if you so wish to complete. Please proceed.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And I'm happy to go back and repeat what I was saying, that we in Trinidad and Tobago, we know that we are coming from behind, but we are well able to achieve the heights we are supposed to achieve and will achieve under the astute leadership of our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, who is driving this thrust and ensuring that we do the things we have to do so that we will be able to position ourselves at the thrust and at the helm, at the head of the cultural tourism growth trend. So, Madam Speaker, as I close, I want to reiterate that diversification is a many-pronged issue. It is not so simple as just moving away from oil and gas. It includes increasing our revenue streams from different areas. It also includes looking at different markets for the products that we already have. I want to also reiterate for all of our listening and viewing public that our Prime Minister has been at the head of the efforts to increase our markets and to grow our tourism sector. And I want to reiterate that it is important for our Prime Minister to be at the head because it means that all of us are drawn with him into ensuring that we do what we have to do to diversify our economy. I want to also reiterate, Madam Speaker, or Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts is well positioned, is working, and is focused on developing our cultural tourism product and ensuring that it is varied, it is diverse, it reflects our culture, it reflects our society, and that is exactly what our work is, and we are about the people's business. I want to also, as I close, ensure that I reject this motion. It is completely, Mr. Deputy Speaker, unfounded because the PNM, there's one government that has done all it can do to diversify our economy. And if it is one government, it is this government led by Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, and it is the PNM who has always been at the helm of ensuring that our economy is diversifying. There's no other party that can take that onto themselves. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity as we go about doing exactly what we know we have to do, and God will grant us all success. I thank you.
I recognize the member for Separia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the Honourable Member for Chaconas East, Member of Parliament, Fazal Karim, for bringing this very important motion for debate in this House. In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is the fourth day of debate on this motion, which really exemplifies how important it is for the economy and people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, sir.
I also want to thank members who have contributed on this very important motion. But you know, I am very, very disappointed that after 3 days and part of today, going into day 4, after listening to 7 members of the government, I am more convinced than ever that this government doesn't have a clue about diversification.
Well said.
No government presenter, Mr. Deputy Speaker, articulated a vision or a plan. Instead, what we got were segments or snatches and a lot of rhetoric as well, but no vision or plan with respect to a roadmap on their part for diversification. No member on that side provided any data to support the assertions that things are getting better. No member even appeared to be convinced of what they were saying in their presentations. But most disappointing of all is that no member offered any hope in a country that is desperately crying out for hope. No member offered hope that things would be better in Trinidad and Tobago. Instead, we had a continuation from day one of this debate. I have read and listened to the various contributions. So from day one, they've resorted back to the same rhetoric of blame Kamala and blame everyone, blame everyone. The blame game is very much there. And they're doing that after 3 years. I mean, today the Honorable Member for St. Joseph is repeating his rhetoric, repeat, the same 3 years about commission and open and so on. If he would check with the officers in his ministry, he would find that we had an entire plan for dealing with the opening of the Cuba Children's Hospital. And you know what is so sad, and that is something I'll come back to when I answer the member of St. Nancy's on this whole issue of tourism. What is so sad is that the member has, or ought to have had, documents relating to this hospital, the Cuba Children's Hospital, in which there are plans leading up to the commissioning, and I want to repeat, we did not open the hospital. There is a process to commission the hospital, hand it over from the contractors to the ministry, and then for the rollout thereafter. But long before that, there's an entire schedule, Mr. Deputy Speaker, an entire schedule for the actual opening, the rolling out and making that hospital functional. And you know what? The member speaks of tourism and cultural tourism and so on. When we have seen the drastic drops, there's only a few times you've seen tourist arrivals in this country drop to those numbers, which I'll share with you in a short while. Talking about that, when what we need is the forex, the whole issue of diversification, the whole limb of it is the foreign exchange. Which one of all these programs will be earning any foreign exchange? And therefore the member appears not to have any understanding of what diversification of an economy is about and what is the roadmap to get there. So back to the Cuba Children's Hospital. The whole thrust, member, it hurts some of the truth has been told, huh? So I will just ignore him. The whole thrust for that hospital in Cuba, and the member is for health. The member is very duplicitous, you know. One day he says it's not a children's hospital because you have how many beds for adults? 150 for adults. But today he comes and says, oh, it's a children's hospital, only 80 beds. 80 beds. So contradicts himself, misleads. And then the whole purpose of it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you know what? Was to earn foreign exchange. In addition to that hospital, amongst other things that we did, was to get medical tourism to the country. To bring from the CARICOM, from the region, and from elsewhere, to a world-class facility right here, in the heart, in the gem of Trinidad and Tobago. Remember, talk about a gem. That is one of the gemstones, that hospital. And in addition to the revenue earner...
Members on both sides, and please do not hollow out to the chair. Right? I will determine as we go along. Okay? Continue, member for Siparia.
Thank you so much, sir. The hospital. Hospital in Cuba. Call it by any other name. They don't want to call it an adult and something. Whatever name. That hospital was built by the People's Partnership with a view to taking care of the children and adults in Trinidad and Tobago, but also in the diversification trust with respect to medical tourism. You know what the plan was, sir? And those documents are within the remit of the Ministry of Health. The plan was to create, and did create, approval was given to create over 2,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker. 2,000 jobs for young people here. That's why we opened the Nursing Academy and other health training facilities in El Dorado to train them for that hospital. Today, 200 doctors are trained. They cannot get a job. And this member will come here to talk about who commissioned and who didn't commission.
And a construction site.
But there's construction site too, almost 3 years later. It is totally unacceptable in society. So here you have something you can get foreign exchange, you can help diversification, but no, you want to play games. Ask the member for Sabara, what's the plan? You want the plan? I will give you the plan. Have that plan. Before that hospital was commissioned in August, this didn't happen by overnight, you know. This took time, step by step by step, for the commission, for the rollout, for the creation of the positions, for the equipment. It is sitting there, it's a white elephant, because of spite and malice and evil of those on the other side. So we have the plan. I will send it in an envelope and share it with you. And I thank Dr. Boda and the Southwest Regional Authority, who were all working on this plan. So that's on that issue, just to deal with the untruths that come out of St. Joseph or this hospital each time. So here I'm saying, continuing on this blame game, hoping we would forget that we've spent over $110 billion as we speak. Forgetting that we've spent that in 32 and a half months. Yes? Yes, they have things to show. They have new cars. They have new suits. Yes? They have contracts for their friends. They have golfing. You have house too, so stop that house. Yeah.
Members, member for Laventille West. Members, Laventille West, Couva South, Couva South, Laventille West, Princestown. Chief Whip, hold on. I have recognized the member for Separia, who is on the floor, and I am not going to tolerate those outbursts again. So any one of those three members just identified, any outbursts, I am not going to tolerate it. Member for Separia, continue, proceed.
Thank you so much, sir. And I wonder if we know right now, as we're speaking, do we know why it is at the postcab yesterday that the Galleon's Passage, it was supposed to arrive whenever it was supposed to arrive, and then when we were supposed to stay in Cuba for how many days? 10 days. Why that has changed to 4 weeks now? This is disclosed in the postcard. Why? I have a document and I'm asking here today, because that is important. This boat is important in the Diversification Trust, because it will help with the same tourism. It will help with the same tourism sector and so on. So this document, sir, purports to be a report coming from dealing with safety issues of the Galleon's Passage. And there are 3 areas of grave concern in it. 30 minutes, thank you. 3 areas of grave concern. They have to do with, First of all, and I'm asking if this is true because this was sent to me, sir, in my postbox. Name of ship, Galleon's Passage. And these are the particulars at the time of inspection. Fire safety measures, deficiency, fire fighting equipment and appliances. I'll share it with you then. This is a report.
Let's identify the source, please.
Yes, this is a report that is coming from the, out of the internet. I'll give him the exact in a minute. And I'm asking whether it's true, if even this document is true. It purports to say, it's an allegation, that fire safety measures, fire fighting, okay, I'll do it another way, sir. I have been advised of an allegation that there are fire safety measures deficiencies with respect to the Galleon's Passage, fire fighting equipment and appliances missing. The defect, missing. Second, fire safety measures, other deficiencies, clearly hazardous safety, missing. Wow. Propulsion and auxiliary, deficiency, auxiliary engines, missing. This allegation has been made, and I don't know if it's true, so I'll ask our members, why is it that the allegation, it doesn't matter who is made, this is a rumor.
Listen, member.
I have been told of
Member,
this.
1 second. Honorable AG, there are procedures of how we operate in this house. Member for Siparia, you take responsibility for your quotations and your submissions. Fair enough, members? Proceed.
Thank you.
Standing order. Matter of standing order. The standing orders under general privileges. I'm just asking the honourable member to identify the source, because in a debate and to reply, one must have the source of the allegations other than just said. This is the leader of the opposition speaking to an issue which concerns the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that very vague reference does not allow the privilege of Parliament to operate in terms of a reply.
If that's causing so much concern for the AG, I withdraw it.
Yeah.
But I'm asking whether there are any safety effects with respect to the Galleon's passage, and why is it it's staying for, instead of 10 days, we were told yesterday 4 weeks. Are there other issues apart from what we have been told on this matter?
Honourable member,
yes, sir.
just to respond based on the AG's comment, and again, it's clear that you take responsibility as the member quoting the source. If you're unable to quote the source, you take responsibility for what you would have mentioned in the debate.
Speaker, before you rose, I indicated that I'm withdrawing the statement, but I'm asking questions as to the safety measures there with respect to the Galleon. So I want to put this debate, sir, in context of a lot of misinformation, misdirection, which has manifested in mismatched policy prescriptions coming from the government. And if they continue in this vein, then this economy, as we had said before in the midterm review, on crash course.
Like Barbados.
The member for St. Anne's compared us to, said she wanted to look at countries with respect to a continuum to deal with diversity. Well, I'm not sure if that is how we look at diversification. And the member said, well, okay, let's look at Chile, which appears to be diversified as versus Venezuela. And then makes a very startling comment that we are in the middle. Trinidad is in the middle between Chile and Venezuela. And again, I have to question whether the member understands we are in the middle of these two. And that is not, well, you can correct yourself thereafter. We'll check the Hansard. That is the impression that I was created. Chile, and then where do we station Trinidad and Tobago? In the middle. And so it is very clear that in our economy, there is very, very little diversity. We're nowhere in the middle. We're nowhere in the middle. All the data reveal, all the data, whether CSO, CBTT, IMF, all the data, World Bank, all data points to the handcuffing, the concentration of our economy in the energy sector. That cannot be, we are in the middle of two extremes. We are way down at the end, if there is such a continuum. We are handcuffed to the energy sector. Our entire budgets are heavily dependent on the revenue from energy sector. Our spending on the non-energy sector, again, handcuffed to the revenues from the energy sector. Our markets, our trading markets, and our production, our products, heavily concentrated in the energy sector. And strong product concentration, the share of the top 20 exports, you will see, the majority being again from the energy sector, concentration in that energy sector. So, and our again, tied to Forex from the energy sector. And our main everything then is on this energy sector. It's a lifeblood. It's a lifeblood of what happens in the economy in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a very serious concentration in the energy sector. What does that then? What it does, yes, we have a comparative advantage in the energy sector. So I'm not saying we abolish it or we don't develop it. But we must complement that energy sector from matters happening in the energy sector. And you know why? It is because of the very uncontrollable impacts that happen to us here because of price shocks. We have no control of the price, none whatsoever. We might have to thank President Trump and others and so on, because there might be war in the Middle East, so the prices are going up a little bit. We have others to thank for that. Nothing that we have done. Price shocks, external price shocks, nothing. So whilst we are getting a little bump right now because of the fear and a few other factors, Iran, yes, Kim Jong, Korea and so on, Venezuela up on the other side. Why is a little bump in oil and gas prices? We cannot say hooray, forget everything else, because it's going to happen again. I mean, when the minister spoke on the midterm, he talked about, today, yes, it's what, $70? 70 or 71. You know, today it's not 70 or 71. And in fact, reports coming in as of today, it's dropping again. It's very volatile. And we are vulnerable to those external shocks because of the volatility in the prices and so on. So, dependence in the energy sector. What does it mean? Just let's take a look at some data very quickly. The economic contribution of the energy sector to GDP, it is at 18.8% 2016. Revenue from the energy sector is at 14.6%. Merchandise export and receipts, 78. Total employment, negligible. So we are handcuffed to energy, which is the lifeblood to everything else, but provides a very small percentage of jobs. And one of the things of diversification, yes, is to get forex, but it's also to create jobs, to create sustainable jobs. That's why we are looking at the hospital to create medical tourism, create over 2,000 jobs. And then we continue the contribution, the concentration. What does it mean then? The World Bank in 2017, Deputy Speaker, explained that economic diversification is very critical for economic development. What it does, if you're diversifying, is to move your economy from that concentration on production and the trade markets. Now our trade markets as well, very concentrated trade markets, the US and the CARICOM, the majority of our products go there. The markets, we need to diversify markets. That's why when we're in office, we signed numerous trade agreements with other members. I used to talk about South-South trade instead of North-South trade, US and Canada and Europe and England. And so let's look down south. So we're looking at South America, Latin America, Central America, and we signed a number of trade agreements with these countries because we are also in market concentration. So what is this diversification? When I said the honourable member that didn't seem to have a full understanding. What we need to do is to shift towards a more varied trade and domestic production in the economy. And in doing that, to increase jobs and reduce poverty. We can do a little more of that, but I really want to get into some other issues. That concentration then, from all the data, is not likely to improve over the medium term. There's an Article 4 report of the IMF 2017, November. They said that the current account balance will remain perpetually in deficit, at least until 2022. So how do we measure the level of diversification? Well, we can look at the foreign exchange drivers, and we can see what has been happening here. We see the current account balance has been declining. The international reserves, foreign reserves, declining. When it was in September, when we left, it was over $1 billion US. By August 2017, gone down to $8 billion, and our import cover, months of income cover, also falling. So we're seeing the foreign exchange drivers, using that as a metric to evaluate diversification levels. We are way out of limb in this. So we need to import we need to diversify products, diversify markets, and whilst we understand the buzzword, everybody has that word in their tongue. Diversification is a buzzword, if you may say so. But it is not a magical concept. Not even a magic man from Diego Martin, Northeast. You cannot just wave a wand. There must be a plan. There must be a roadmap. You must do it with deliberate government policy. And that is what we tried to do between 2010 and 2015. We laid the building blocks. We were putting down a network of building blocks for diversification of the economy. And I would like to share some of these with the honourable members here. Building block 1, which is required for diversification is educated, competent, technologically updated workforce. They must also be happy and motivated, and they must be well paid. So what we did in education, we talk about a technological, educated, trained workforce and so on. We invested in laptops, technological advancements to develop our children for a knowledge-based economy, develop our children for the fourth industrial revolution. That's what we were doing with the laptops, and that they have now been taken away. We accepted that we are in the digital age. You know, I think the whole country, the majority of right-thinking people in this country understand that we are in the digital age, but that government is still operated in analog. They're still operating in analog. So we accepted that. So they took away the laptops. 60,000 students have not received laptops and so on over the years. In tertiary education, thanks to the member for Chaguanas East. So Karen East did a lot of work in the lower levels of education. Tertiary education, we increased GATE participation to 65%. We surpassed our own target. Madam Speaker, we expanded GATE, UTT, the South Campus, the Teaching Hospitals Initiative, and the development initiatives towards the education city of St. Augustine. What have they done now? What have they done? They have closed the gate. They have closed the gate. They have fined UTT staff. The university had that they were on hold, on stall, the South Campus. You know, not everyone can get a degree online from Aberdeen University, you know, Madam Speaker. Not everyone. And so the plan was, if you're up in the north, you can go to St. Augustine. More spaces would be created for students up north to go to St. Augustine. And then the ones from south who come in to take these spaces, there would have been the South Campus for the southeast, the southwest. But you see, every time they think, as was said earlier, that we built that hospital and we forget where was it, Diego Martin and so on. We built a state-of-the-art coronage. So when this hospital in Cuba was put, it was put for others all along. So you had Port Spain up there, and they said, you know, it's 600,000 people. Access what? San Fernando General, you know. 600,000 patients. Dr. Bodo will tell you that. A very large, from Point 14, Mayaro, all down the south, and also from Central. So when the South Campus was built, it was not to displace persons up here. It was to allow for more and more and more people to be educated. That too would have helped us now. That education city, that campus, and plus more spaces open up in St. Augustine, the UTT, the NESC, MSc, all of this, you know what would have given us, madam? Educational tourism. Educational tourism. So we've spoken about sports tourism, about medical tourism. We were also diversifying into sports tourism. Sports tourism. In addition, when we looked at infrastructure, education and so on, we also were looking at the labor force, you know. We paid salaries on time. We settled over 130 wage negotiations. You want a happy, motivated workforce in order to diversify. What have they done? Late and non-payment of salaries. Talking about 0-0 and laughing, bold-faced, shamelessly. They ain't riot yet. Tax. What we did with jobs, we created over 57,000 jobs. How many people have lost their jobs now? How many people have lost their jobs? I would say it's now going between 30 and 40,000 people have lost their jobs. And the answer to that, yes, thanks. The answer of the government was, we're looking again over 3,000 truck drivers in Canada. When we were saying this, what has happened? I think the truck driver went without the driver. Nobody went. No one went as far as I'm aware. And what we did, why I'm saying the job losses are so bad and people are really suffering. In 2010, and this is the latest CSO data, 36,700 persons about were without jobs. When we left office in 2015, that had reduced down to 21,800. By 2017 June, which is the latest data I have been able to get, 31,000, it's gone up again, persons without jobs, 31,600, about a 4.9% rate of unemployment. So we had brought the rate down from 5.9 unemployment down to about 3.3. That is climbing again because of job losses and the non-creation of jobs. Now, that's, I said building blocks, a motivated workforce, trained and so on. Another building block has to do with financial incentives, law, GDP and so on. What we did in the financial sector, you all remember? No new taxes.
Yes.
Not one new tax. Removal of the VAT on food. No property tax. Instead, we gave tax breaks that enabled foreign exchange to be earned, and that is what has given the uptick now in the energy sector for the Juniper, Angeline,
Compression.
truck, and these other projects. The Mitsubishi one, that is the largest project that is happening now, came in under the 2010-2015 project. What have they been doing instead? Tax after tax, removal of incentives, VAT on food, property tax. They're boasting about new gas, but as I said, didn't do anything. The shrinking GDP, raiding of the HSF, increased borrowing. Their strategy is not about diversification, Their strategy for the economy is tax, 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 borrow, 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 and spend. Well, with no thought that tomorrow we are mortgaging the future of people of this country because they will have to pay back all the borrowings and so on taking place. What did we do with respect to the legislative framework? Several things happened with the legislative framework. And if you look on the Parliament website, as I did, we will see that we passed in the same leg, meaning time period. I'm not looking at 5 years, I'm looking at the same 32.5 months and so on. More legislation than they have done in their time, or more than many other governments.
Sweet.
What are we doing now? Let's look at the legislation passed in this chamber. And the total bills brought during our period, May to February 2013, total bills 85.
Wow. Wow.
Under the watch of this government, total bills 62. Passed by this government, 29. Passed by our government, 48.
Wow.
Now, I only raise
That's
this.
a performance.
I raise this because, and again, you need the legislative framework to properly get investor confidence, to enable business and ease of doing business and so on. Madam Speaker, I raise that because the Honorable Attorney General would come here when they first formed the government, very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as they say, and I know he means well, would come and tell us, we must have a legislative agenda, a legislative agenda, a legislative agenda. And that legislative agenda really set out what the government intended to do for the period September 15 to 17, yes? 46 bills. September 17 to 19, 30 bills. And now how many did I tell you just a minute ago actually done out of those bills brought? Total bills, I'm sorry, madam.
Honourable Member for Superior, your original 30 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes if you wish to avail yourself of it. Please proceed.
Please, madam. Thank you very much, madam. So it is a disconnect in terms of bills brought and in terms of the legislative agenda, and time is fast running out because you will make your 3-year mark just in September, which is Parliament closes for half July, August, so there's not a lot of time to make up that legislative agenda. There's also the issue of the building blocks with respect to political will. When we came into office, and it's happening all over again, interlocking directorships. We talk about political will and governance. There's one director I know of, and there are many, holds 11 directorships, 11 in very high-level energy sector companies. And what we were trying to do then as a building block is to free up the economy from the stranglehold of the 1%, the big boys. We opened up the system for small businesses to get in. Many of these things they did, what have they done since they came in? They reintroduced the forex control. Numerous interlocking directorships, as I said. And there's much more on that point, but we move on. Law and order, I think an area of grave concern to every person in this country.
Correct.
Law and order. And what we did, we created a safer, stabler environment. Lowest serious crimes down, lowest in 33 years. And you know what is interesting? We did it with the same police force that we have now. And we did it with the same commissioner, acting commissioner. So what's different? The difference is the red and Rowley, that's the difference. Red and ready, sorry, that's the difference. We established a lot of areas of the community comfort patrols, shut down. Police stations, we built many of those, more police vehicles, the GPS and whatever. And what has happened now? What have they done? What's the murder rate today now? It's what, 224? 224 as of May 24th, 25th. When we left office, when we came into office, that was amongst the highest. In 2000, it was 509. And we steadily brought that down. By the time we left office, it was 410. Do you know, 2017, 494. At this rate that we are going, we will be well over 500 if something is not done. So the rest will be over 500 at the end of the. And then they say, oh, we gleefully say it. We gleefully, you know, I went to a funeral on Monday, 20-something-year-old, Tuesday, 20-something-year-old. I mean, when you hear his family, whatever, everything that is good in a son of this country, lost his life senselessly, leaving his family. You know, when I left that funeral, and by the time I'd come home the next morning, you know, I had a 26-year-old, I was shot in fact, the very same morning. That's after the minister had his big meeting up in wherever with all these divisional heads and so on. Look, please, I have said there is low-hanging fruit. We pay soldiers, we feed them, we clothe them. Let's get their boots on the ground. Let them work together with the police, man. We have to do something. And it's not good enough today. I heard an answer to a question saying, well, they reported, and this divisional heads report was clear. Whatever those reports are, whatever they're doing, it's not working. And don't tell me, as you want to do, that look, that's a police business, you know. It's not us. You like Pontius Pilate. You wash your hands of the slaughter taking place and try to put it and blame police. But the police are the boots on the ground. They will implement, but where does the policy come from? It must come from the government. Don't wash your hands. You told me when we did not support you in the anti-gang bill, you said the blood is on my hands. Blood on my hands. What happened? We gave you the support, you know, up to now when I checked last night. It is not proclaimed. Not proclaimed. From January, we are now going into May, June. Blood on our UNC hands. Blood, well, whose hands now, I ask you? Whose hands? The blood of these children, these sons and daughters of our land, you know, whose hand? And what are you going? I'm not blaming you. Get up. Do your work. Start working. Get something done.
Earn your salary.
This is a really, really serious matter when it comes to crimes.
Earn your pay.
And on the other hand now, 10 minutes, thank you. On the other hand, all these things we had set up, all shut down by Minister Dillon. Formal establishment of the National Operations Center as the backbone for intelligence gathering and dissemination, shut down. Formal establishment of the Rapid Response Unit, what? Shut down. Formal establishment of the Counter-Trafficking, Human Trafficking Unit, I don't know what has happened, I'm being told that is also on stall. Establishment of the Energy Sector Security Initiative, that too on stall, on hold. Community Comfort Patrol, I mentioned, shut down. Establishment of a Special Operations Group, I'm told, shut down. Transnational Organized Crime Unit, when last have we heard anything about this unit? Counter-trafficking, all of these, gone. Improve visibility, operations and response of law enforcement. Well, let's see if that happens after all these meetings this week, but it has not been happening. The Highway Patrol Unit again, high visibility. What's the status? Establishment of a national security alert state, increases or decreases threat assessment, gone. Preventing UK visas being enforced. I wonder if you knew that was a major issue for us during our time in government, where the UK wanted us to have visas. And I must compliment former Mr. Gary Griffith, who worked with law enforcement to prevent that from happening. Collaboration with international agencies. We signed at the United Nations the UN Security Resolution on anti-terrorism, thank God, because now we have an ally that we can collaborate with when the threat of terrorists has already heightened in the world at this point in time. Collaboration with international agencies, I mentioned. And several of the programs shut down. Now, these are not just talk. They were not just thoughts. These were things that were actually approved by the then government, the then cabinet, all gone. So when you, and action. So when we talk about crime, and is it police, you all really, this government really has to stop blaming everybody for their problems. So you blame the police. You go up to the Shogun, you're a visitor in the people's country, and you tell them about these travel advisories. They are protecting their citizens. That's what they were doing. You go there, so are you telling them they're travel advisories? They're lying? Is it you're lying on, when you talk about this? Go, you're a guest. And that reminds me, the honourable member talked about the Prime Minister, diversification, and asphalt. Well, look, I couldn't believe my eyes. I could not believe somebody is not telling you the truth, Madam MP. We in government had a contract with a Chinese company, I think it's 2 Chinese companies, for the supply of asphalt. But you know, it gets curiouser and curiouser. I am told that when they came into office, they stopped the contract. So the Prime Minister has to fly to China now to get the same thing, get another contract.
Same thing. Shape.
And then, we come 6 months. We come to the other initiative in China. Did I speak of it already? The port in Labrie. Prime Minister went. The member is very impressed. Went down to the port in Labrie. Did you know that we were already our government was already engaged in this project for financing and cooperation for that port in Labrie? In fact, our government, when we were in government, signed an agreement for the very said project. And you could go up and check the archives. I just had it done when I heard the minister speak, the minister speak, you know, about developing and building the port in Labrie and 7 industrial parks throughout Trinidad to operationalize the agreements and so on. A total investment of US $750 million. So we had the agreement. It was signed since in 2014. And it had reached a stage for that, to get the money from Exim Bank, there was to be a moratorium for 5 years. Today, I think when you all asked, we couldn't hear terms and conditions of these various deals. I am told the project had reached the stage of finalizing the financing arrangements. Okay? And guess what? That government shut it down, disrupted. Prime Minister now wants to go to China.
The same thing.
For the same thing. The same thing. And that project, Labrie, was for the constituency of the very bright and beautiful member for Labrie.
Yeah, she's bright.
Your own constituents. You like to tell us what we do only for our constituents. I want to tell you, when we were in government, we worked for every part of this country, all over this country. And I can point to where we were. 58, huh? I wanted to speak. That's not true, and don't let me remind you. You know that is not true. So I'll just leave you. Not the school alone, but we talk. Housing, nothing for you personally, but for your constituents. Honorable Madam Speaker, I wanted to spend a little time on renewable energy. I think it's important to flag it. Because whilst we are saying new products, new markets, additional products, and so on, it is very important we keep our eyes on renewable energy, because when the gas is done and when the oil is done, we will be in a very bad place. For a further reason, so our hydrocarbons are finite, so we need renewables, wind and solar and so on. And look, we are blessed. We are blessed with the climate and the natural resources for things like solar and wind. And a second reason is that the world is moving to what they call green and clean energy and moving away from our hydrocarbon, oil and gas. What that means is that we may soon have less markets and less customers to sell our valuable hydrocarbons, which again cut our revenues. So those are some of the reasons. And the third reason we must watch the renewables and invest in them is because we signed, I think it's only this year, the Paris Climate Deal of 2015, which places upon us mandatory obligations for low carbon policies and installations and so on. So if we don't do that, we are going to get into sanctions. So for three reasons, very important ones, renewable energy is something we must aggressively pursue. Now, I shared with you, some of the things we did, but others were put into the manifesto. We talked about the blue and the green and silver economy. We talked about the clusters and the growth poles and so on. All of that is there in the manifesto. But I found it most interesting that Shell's CEO recently, Royal Dutch Shell's Derek Hudson, local country chair of the world's largest oil company. Here's what he's saying. He said, he urged for diversification of the economy, and he said, a direction in which we could go to diversify is, guess where? The blue economy. The blue economy.
You read our manifesto.
The blue economy.
You read our manifesto.
And he says the blue economy, we have in our coastal waters and marine areas something we really seriously need to look at as we advance this economy going forward. And this is coming from someone who is from the energy sector. And then he says, I say, this is Derek Hudson, Trinidad needs to diversify its economy and to do so rapidly. So I found that most interesting and very gratifying because we have had this on our book. So I've shared with you some of our initiatives whilst we're there. We put certain things in the manifesto, and in the 2 minutes I have left, I just want to say that the way forward, adding some additional areas for diversification, research and development. We must aggressively pursue research and development if we are to diversify. Secondly, modern agriculture is the way to go. It's not just agriculture, cotton cane, planting. It's not a menial kind of agriculture, but we're looking at bioinformatics, precision agriculture, plant genetic engineering, organic farming, biotechnology, agricultural production. These are the areas, the new areas in this digital age. And further, maritime logistics is something we must pay particular attention to. We can develop our ports, our waters, Labitco, Point Lisa, Chagaramas, Galeota. We built Galeota, by the way, the port, to take advantage of the oil industry in Guyana, Suriname, and Grenada. Sports, medical tourism, and educational tourism I've spoken of. Sports tourism, we built the infrastructure for it. Sports tourism. A revised blue, green, silver economy with the growth poles and so on. Renewable energy. And of course, the world's greatest shooting star, the digital economy. Everything that we do. The sun in the sky, all the sectors and all the projects has to be the digital economy. Madam, I thank you very much.
Member for San Fernando West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise not having intended to contribute today, but compelled to contribute after Siparia's contribution, to continuously remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago that there is a difference between flights of fantasy and revisionism and the facts. So let's get to the facts, Madam Speaker. This motion is about diversification of the economy. In essence, the contribution from members opposite, and in particular from Siparia, suggests that you must immediately diversify. We must go into research and development, shipping, renewable energy. We must go into maritime logistics. We must go into modernized agriculture, the digital economy. The honorable member suggests that the data outside there is that we are shackled to the plantation economy that the energy sector is. And then the honorable member seeks to chastise this government for not taking all of those steps beyond the boundary of the plantation economy of energy. And the honorable member says, and listen, stop blaming me, stop the blame game, don't talk about, as she put it, the honorable member, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, just get on with it. So let's deal with facts. The state of this economy is such that we have for many years been reliant upon the energy sector. That's a fact. Thanks to the vision of the member for San Fernando East, the Honorable late Patrick Manning, we saw a development of the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, and we saw the energy sector birth, Madam Speaker. That was met with massive opposition from the then UNC, ULF, DLP rooted opposition voices that said, don't throw us off the cane field, don't close off the lands, let us instead avoid the development of an estate. Well, we saw Atlantic LNG trains 1, 2, 3, etc. come about. We saw the iron and steel industry. We saw ammonia. We saw methanol birthed. Coming from that, Trinidad and Tobago migrated away from the actual plantation. In fact, it was the signatory by the Honorable Member Bastio Pandey as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago onto the Cotonou Agreement that saw the end of the sugar industry in Trinidad and Tobago. It ended under the UNC. The Honorable Member here says today, we had this much in expenditure. We settled this amount of industrial relations matters. We settled this number of collective agreements. We paid this. The economy was doing well. Well, let me remind the Honorable Member of the following facts. The revenue from the plantation economy that energy is, in 2014, was $20.5 billion. The revenue in 2015 fell to $400 million. Let me repeat that. $20,000 million in revenue fell to $400 million. That represented a 96% drop in revenue. And that drop in revenue did not happen before the general election. It happened after the general election. What happened next? The next position that happened was the government came, a PNM government, into office. Upon entry into office, the government had precisely 3 days of money in the bank account. 3 days. We had reached the overdraft limit. We were drawn down to 100%. Our debt to GDP ratio had reached 65%. We had billions of dollars in loans which were unsecured. We had, for example, the Damon vessels came to Trinidad and Tobago, no loan, no agreement, no payment. We had the Chinese arrangements to be done for the Couva Hospital, no perfection of loans. We had the Point Fortin Hospital afoot, no loans in place. We had the National Gas Company raided to the tune of $16 billion, all taken under the astute leadership of the member for Siparia. But Madam Speaker, let me explain what...
48.4 and 48.6, Madam Speaker.
Would you rule?
Member, I would ask you to use another word.
The bank accounts of the NGC were raided in the period 2015 going back to 2010. The money which the NGC had collected and the dividends which were paid were disaggregated. All of the $16 billion vanished under the last government. So, Madam Speaker, I would like the Honourable Member for Siparia, as the head of the cabinet in the period 2010 to 2015, to tell this country in the simplest form possible what could possibly have accounted for the drop in revenue of 96%. What could have resulted in the drop in revenue from $20 billion to $400 million? We're hearing a voice across us say the incentives. And Madam Speaker, let me put this plainly for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Incentives are a good thing. But when a cabinet lacks the intelligence and common sense and understanding of how an accounting cycle works, and when a cabinet applies incentives without understanding that you need to cap deferred taxation so that you don't see a drop in revenue from 20 billion to 400 million, and you don't leave Trinidad and Tobago exposed to no revenue from the oil and gas sector till the year 2024. When you do that, you are saying to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you don't understand common sense. Now, hear the further argument that comes from members opposite. And there's a particular member that speaks for the UNC, sort of a bumbling, fumble sort of person who constantly looks as if he's falling over and rattling things off. It's a spokesman.
Madam Speaker, 48-4 and 6.
On the outside, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, 48-4 and 6.
Madam Speaker, I'm talking about someone on the outside. I don't want my friends upset.
Honorable Attorney General, I know you're a man of words. You can do it better than that. I've ruled. Please, continue.
Well, let me make it clear. I wasn't speaking about anybody in this house who may be prone to bumbling and stumbling. I'm talking about someone outside the house. And Madam Speaker, I don't know why my friends wish to associate themselves with members inside with those sentiments. But anyway, the point is this, Madam Speaker. When you listen to this bumbling argument, this nearly fall over argument, this obscene sort of logic that is applied by spokesmen for members opposite. So, yes, Madam Speaker. When we look at this, we understand that Trinidad and Tobago was effectively left in the position where all of our revenue dissipated. Now, I'd like to understand this. How does one spend on wages for increase? How does one spend on national projects for capital improvement in your country? How does one spend on diversification away from a plantation model when 96% of your revenue has been thrown away by the representations and agreements and ineptitudes of the Kamla Prasad Bisesa government that prevailed in the period 2010 to 2015. Madam Speaker, those are the facts. But Madam Speaker, I want to put on record something relative to energy. You see, it wasn't only that Trinidad and Tobago saw its revenue thrown away. 96% of its revenue. Madam Speaker, there's a prattling sound coming from next door. That's a little bit disturbing. May I ask for your protection?
Attorney General, what I'd ask you to do, and I know you can rise above that, if you could please just direct your discourse this way, and if necessary, I'll give you the protection.
It's still continuing, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, it wasn't only the failure to cap deferred revenue. It was also coupled with the fact that the NGC was set up specifically so that it could improve its footprint away from energy. And let me explain what I mean. British Petroleum as a company in the globe. British Petroleum doesn't survive on the North Sea oil. In fact, there was a period of time when the North Sea oil closed down entirely, when the tax regimes had changed. British Petroleum functions by way of its investments overseas. Let's give an example. Right here in Trinidad and Tobago, British Petroleum earns 17% of its global revenue from Trinidad and Tobago. So they moved away from the North Sea. The National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, in the period under the member for San Fernando East, the Patrick Manning-led government, saw Trinidad and Tobago invest in footprints outside of Trinidad and Tobago, specifically footprints in Africa and footprints in the United States of America. And in particular, the footprint in Ghana, the footprint in Uganda, as it was meant to extend, was met with by someone who occupied the chair of the Ministry of Energy, one Kevin Ramnarine, who presided over the giveaway of 96% of our revenue, and specifically who saw the governments in Africa tell Trinidad and Tobago, we will not do business with you because you will not respect your contractual agreements with us. And so Ghana did not acquiesce with the NGC's developmental plans. But it was worse. I mentioned the United States of America. The government under the member for Siparia came in and met a relationship with NGC, which was tied to a deal with a company referred to as Cheniere. In the Cheniere matrix, Madam Speaker, Cheniere at that point, when the UNC came in, was a company which was at the cusp of development. And I want to quote from a book called From Oil to Gas and Beyond, a review of the Trinidad and Tobago model and analysis of future challenges, edited by Trevor M. Bupsing and Gregory Maguire. And I quote from page 191. The decision by the United States Department of Energy in May 2011 to give Cheniere Energy of Houston permission to export up to 2.2 billion cubic feet of LNG a day for 20 years to any country which the U.S. has signed a free trade agreement could also threaten Trinidad and Tobago producers of LNG, such as BPTT, even in the Caribbean market. Madam Speaker, it is a fact that Trinidad and Tobago, under the Patrick Manning government, was at the cusp of signing the free trade arrangements and concluding the deal with Cheniere, and that the UNC government, under the member for Siparia and under the Minister of Energy, Kevin Ramnarine, told Cheniere to get out of Trinidad and Tobago. Cheniere later went on, just for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to become the #1 producer and exporter of fracked gas, gas which has been obtained from the shale gas revolution, which saw the United States of America moving from being one of the largest importers of Trinidad and Tobago gas, as it is refined, to becoming one of the largest exporters in the world. So let me put this in bullet point. Number one, the Kamla Prasad Bisesa government, the member for Siparia as the cabinet's head, as the prime minister, saw the giveaway of 96% of our revenue until the year 2025. The honourable member did so by ensuring that there was no deferred taxation.
48.4, 48.6. He said the Prime Minister stood to give away. Yes. 48.4, 48.6.
Overruled.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, it is a fact that the cabinet led by the member for Siparia, the UNC government, saw the giveaway and decimation of Trinidad and Tobago's revenue by 96% by failing to put a cap on deferred taxation. Fact number two, it is the Kamla Prasad Bisesa, the member for Siparia's led government, that saw the giveaway of
48.5, the Kamla Prasad Bisesa government. I think he needs.
No, you do it
You
deliberately.
do it too often, and he does it deliberately.
the honourable member. Thank you.
Members, I think it's an established practice here that sometimes we identify the government by the name of the leader. That is quite different from a practice of calling a member by their name and also while I'm on my legs, I'll also say this, and it happens with both sides, in terms of referring to a particular member. When people are quoting somebody outside, they call that particular member by that particular member's name. Once you're quoting something in here, it is your own words. So that is not to be tolerated. That breaks the rule. But I rule that if you're describing the government by the name of the leader of the government, that is all right.
Speaker, I thank you for your ruling. Madam Speaker, the point is that the members opposite are very much on labels. It's okay for they themselves to repeatedly call the Kamla Prasad Bisesa government's name. They are now sensitive when it is offered with criticism to economic policy. So, Madam Speaker, let me repeat this. The UNC government, under the astute leadership of Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, the member for Siparia, the honorable member, senior counsel, as the honorable member is, presided over the decimation of Trinidad and Tobago's revenue to the tune of 96%, presided over one of the single most astoundingly bad decisions, a tragic decision, to tell a company called Cheniere Energy to move out of Trinidad and Tobago's business. In 2011, what became the largest exporter of shale gas in its refined versions was done so without the benefit of a cooperative agreement with Trinidad and Tobago. So our partnership in a diversification footprint outside of Trinidad and Tobago, where revenue could be earned, was shut down by the honorable member opposite, the honorable member for Siparia leading the team opposite. Madam Speaker, it gets worse. The honorable member for Siparia had the bold-faced argument that Forex is needed for diversification. The honorable member said in her gallery of a speech a short while ago, in her representations and exhortations, you need Forex. Then we are hearing honorable members opposite say it is true. Madam Speaker, of course it is true. It is absolutely true that you need Forex to diversify. Question one, you need to earn Forex. Question number one, what, Madam Speaker, would every school child know to be the truth? What is the number one earner of foreign exchange in Trinidad and Tobago? Not the oil and gas sector? So if all of your Forex comes from your oil and gas sector, and you ensure that you give away 96% of the revenue earned in US dollars, and you make sure that that prevails until the year 2025, how on God's earth do you have the guts, the intellectual honesty, the common sense to say you need Forex and this government should get Forex? Madam Speaker, it is the Keith Rowley-led government, it is the member for Diego Martin's leadership as the head of cabinet that has ensured the following. Number one, that the oil and gas upstreamers have agreed that they will renegotiate the taxation regimes in Trinidad and Tobago. Number two, that has been evidenced by an open statement coming from the oil and gas sector of the immediate payment of $1 billion. That came as a result of the Honorable Prime Minister's visit to the boardrooms of the oil and gas companies in his associated trip during the CHOGM conference. Number three, the honorable members opposite fail to realize what has been told to the country. It matters not what the price of oil is or what the price of gas is. It matters what your taxation take on it is. And in treating with the taxation, the Ministry of Energy did a spotlight which demonstrated that Trinidad and Tobago conservatively loses approximately 12 billion United States dollars per year in the taxation market, because the honorable members opposite did absolutely nothing about transfer pricing or about improvement of regimes. And Madam Speaker, let me demonstrate the bold-facedness of the my learned friends opposite. Listen to the honorable member for Siparia. We, in our time, looked at legislation, and we decided that we would bring X number of bills. Look at the same period. We brought 85 bills. The PNM brought 62. We had 48 proclaimed. The other side only had 29. That's what the honorable member opposite had to say. Madam Speaker, I want to ask Trinidad and Tobago if they remember that the vast majority of legislation brought by the honorable members opposite lies unproclaimed. Data Protection Act, Electronic Transactions Act, DNA. Madam Speaker, there's the same members that passed 3 bites at preliminary inquiries. 3 bites. And the only thing that they could have proclaimed was Section 34. Cost the taxpayers of this country millions of dollars in legal fees to proclaim and unproclaim Section 34. I thank Tobago East for reminding me. Same members, and hear the level of argument coming from the member for Pointe-a-Pierre, who I'll excuse as a newcomer. You voted for it. Honorable member, there's a difference between voting for a bill and proclaiming. The parliament doesn't sit in proclamation. It's the cabinet that proclaims. The same way that I can say the anti-gang legislation, the same way I can say, Madam Speaker.
Member for Naparima, I don't think you have contributed as yet to the debate, but I assure you, when you catch my eye at the proper time, you will have your time, I'm sure.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member, in fact, did contribute. It was so unforgettable that I could understand that one may not remember it. But the honourable member for Naparima did, in fact, contribute. So, Madam Speaker, I am able to say, without a doubt, as I thank Tobago East for reminding me, the honourable members opposite took great pride in proclaiming the children's legislation, in making sure that child rehabilitation centres became part of the law, and then ensuring that they went to court to say they had no centres, and seeing millions of dollars paid on that. So, Madam Speaker, let me remind, you must be careful with foolishness enveloped under the label of sensibility, Madam Speaker. When we look at the children's legislative packages that we've dealt with, the Family and Children Division Bill, Madam Speaker, we could have mama-guy the country. We could have mama-guy the country and come with 20 pieces of law. We took 19 other pieces of law and consequentially amended them in one act. So if the honourable member wants to add tit for tat and this and that, no, honourable member, we're not at 62. Add another 19 and add another 14. And for the record, the proclamation of the anti-gang legislation, the instructions went today. Why today? Because the Commissioner of Police was asked to give approval, and we received his letter yesterday evening, and the judiciary was asked to give approval, and we received the response yesterday evening. Let me explain why. When the honourable members sat down opposite and proclaimed Section 34, the DPP had to roll out quickly and say, I specifically advise that you should not have done that. You did not consult with me. The judiciary, Madam Speaker, was put into drama. So, honourable members, if you want to proclaim law sensibly, you do it in the fashion we did and you act with immediacy. Having received the anti-gang blessing from the judiciary and the TTPS yesterday, we acted immediately today and the red file went. So, Madam Speaker, I take no comfort in what the honourable members opposite have to say. Madam Speaker, they're talking about legislation. I want to explain the difference between legislation on paper and operationalization. And the honourable members opposite fail to understand, for example, when you pass a Family and Children Division Bill, you amend 20 pieces of law. The honourable members opposite don't have the distinction of being able to say they open 2 courts, they pass the 4 protocols, all the regulations are done, the child rehabilitation centres have been created. The honourable members opposite are comfortable in gallery, in mamagai, in old talk, and in distraction. That is all that it is. It is put into the expression whoops, vaps, and vai. And their spokesmen of the bumbling, falling over type on the outside of this parliament, the huff and puff wheel spinners on the outside of this parliament, they are comfortable in that domain. Madam Speaker, oh Lord, if my grandfather was alive, he'd be rolling in his grave that Naparima occupies the seat he once did. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Madam Speaker, let's treat with some of the further allegations by the Honourable Member for Siparia. Here, the Honourable Member for Siparia. We signed numerous trade agreements. My immediate response to that is, and what next? And what next, Madam Speaker? It didn't matter how many trips to India with the whole bandwagon, with how many documents were signed.
I am on my legs. We're not having a conversation. You know, I expect that there is a certain amount of banter and that members will understand that. But I think some of us are really taking it beyond the limit. And I really hope for the rest of the debate and the rest of the evening we can all maintain some level of decorum and control. Member for San Fernando West.
It matters not how many trips to India, how many trips to China, how many trips to Australia. It matters what happens when you come back. You see, Madam Speaker, when we talk about a trip to the United Kingdom for the Honourable Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, and we see the revision of our regime for taxation, that is what matters. But Madam Speaker, I want to come back to energy. Trinidad and Tobago's fortunes in the large plantation that the energy industry is pegged to the fact that we have proven reserves shared in common with Venezuela. In those proven reserves, Madam Speaker, what we can say is that annexed to the discussions, be it on Loran Manatee or other fields that are shared, comes the discussion of Venezuelan gas, which is effectively stranded in the Venezuelan borders. It is a fact that the eastern seaboard of Venezuela is not developed into the capacity and point where they can exploit and extrapolate the benefit of their wealth in hydrocarbons. But Madam Speaker, it was the Honourable Member for Diego Martin West, the Honourable Keith Rowley as member and head of the cabinet, that saw Venezuela agree to the bringing on of gas from the Venezuelan fields into our facilities. It is cross-border positioning. That is intended to hit the pipelines in a matter of months, Madam Speaker. And what was the representation coming from members opposite? Venezuela, chaos. What will the opposition say? Did you get approvals? Madam Speaker, it caused my learned colleague for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West to come up with a label of a lack of patriotism. But Madam Speaker, it is no different from the very exhortations and negative reflections of the United National Congress as it relates to diversification in Tobago for the Sandals project. I mean, Madam Speaker, you're talking about 700 rooms in Tobago. In 700 rooms, you have to have an airport, you have to have capacity.
For San Fernando West, your 30 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes. It is now 4:28:30. Would now be a convenient time to take the break. Is that the wish of the House? Okay, so that we will resume. This House is now suspended and we shall resume at 5 p.m.